We've got 10 minutes, just free flow. Barney can be here, just in case we need to deflect any your way. Any questions from the audience before we kick off? If not, I know Stuart's got one to get us started, which will warm up the rest of you for some plethora of questions to follow, I'm sure.
Can I just make
a
comment briefly about the relationship between the registry and the IBD bioresource? I think there's a danger that people sometimes view these as competitive instruments. They are absolutely not competitive. We are aiming, and already we've got the bioresource data able to flow into the registry. The bioresource can capture things like the IBD biologics audit data now, and so if you participate in the IBD bioresource and want your data to go into the registry, that can happen automatically. That's not having to re-enter data or duplicate data entry. So I just wanted to make that point. Just to applaud John's point that for every patient, the opportunity to participate in research, I think is a really important principle for all of us interested in Crohn's disease and colitis.
Great. No, important point. Thank you, Miles. Any questions? Otherwise, Stuart, I'm sure, is going to kick us off.
Oh, is that right? Comes
Yes.
to me. Well, I had a question for Sean, actually. I mean, quality improvement is such an important part of this, really. I really like Liz's point about the two-way flow of data and the fact that data coming back is hopefully what's going to incentivize clinical teams to adjust their clinical practice. It's quite a big ask to actually, into part of their daily practice. Do you want to just say something about what sort of data coming back to clinical teams you think is essential to provide for the basis for quality improvement, to enable teams to improve?
Is this? Yeah, you can hear me. Thanks, Stuart. Data is, whatever you're measuring, there's key bits about data. So I think for good quality improvement, you've got to pick a project that's relatively small. So there's the data that could come out of the registry will be huge. So I think you'll be looking at one bit. Quality improvement works best when it's quick and rapid, and you start small and expand. And so the IBD audit is great, but there was a year to 18 months between each tranche of data coming back. And Liz's point about making it more timely. And when my experience with quality improvement data is if you're getting it back weekly, so you can act on it, sense check it very quickly, you trust it, and you can spot changes and whether you're going in the right direction or the wrong direction, because you will experiment. And if you experiment and you're going in the wrong direction, you want to spot that quickly. You don't want to do work for a year and then realize that it's not been of benefit. So the data you choose, whatever you're measuring, will be dependent on what you're trying to improve, but the data back has got to be quick, timely, sense checked, because you're seeing it regularly, and you've got to trust it. And you've got to be at least be comfortable about the ownership and ideally own it.
Whilst Sean's got the microphone, is there any questions specifically for Sean on the QI stuff? If not, I've just got one, Sean, which is just about, I think you mentioned 8 teams in the first piece. What's the plans to actually scale that up? Because 8 is, you've got to start somewhere, I get that, but in terms of scaling it so you get the greatest possible impact across the whole of the UK, do you have any views on how it's scaled?
I think you would review it after each cycle. So we're open to having more than 8 teams. I am cautious. The uptake for the first pilot was immensely quick. So I think you need to gauge enthusiasm in the room and in the country for people taking part. I would hope that we get something between 8 and 16 teams. If it's clear that that was competitive, there was enthusiasm, the feedback was good, then we would want to upskill it and spread it out. But as a general principle of quality improvement, start small, see how you go, get feedback, and expand.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, any questions for the registry guys? Yes, Barney.
Perhaps I could just ask a simple question for the benefit of those who are not involved yet with the registry, but of thinking about it. Simple things. In order to use the web tool, which is probably the simplest way to get started, how much would it cost per year, and who should they contact to get started? Probably by email. Stuart or Liz?
By email. By email. There's a support@ibdregistry.org.uk. I think there may have been a card on chairs. If there isn't, we're very happy. It's on our website. It's our single email address. And we have a startup pack to get people on board and started. And Barney is right. We have a web tool. If if you've got a system, an in-house system in your IT, with your hospital IT department working, that's great. But if there isn't, or it might take time, the web tool is based in the cloud. It doesn't have to be installed anywhere. You can just use it directly without any installation. So that makes it a directly accessible and startable with. And the cost, it's £1,000 plus VAT.
Great.
Per year.
Thank you. Yes, question, John.
Can I just ask a question? If teams are thinking of getting involved in the registry because they want to do the IBD biologics audit, which is on the national QI spreadsheet, and so it's kind of important that we feel we're part of it, can they start small and just enter the new patients that are just starting biologics, of which they're presumably just a handful each month, really? And in that context, £1,000 is a bit expensive, but once they've paid it, they're in. And at the moment, the website doesn't really give you a lead as to how to start just for that audit. So maybe you could say a bit about how that works. I don't know who's best on the audit.
Well, shall I start? Or Fraser, you start. Okay.
I mean, one of the key themes coming out of the talk today, I think, the session is actually start small and build up. And I think focusing on defined groups of patients, such as your biologics patients, is a really logical, sensible place to start. You say £1,000 is quite a lot of money. Well, JAG charge £2,000 to £3,000 a year. Admittedly, it's a very different financial model. There is an uplift for tariffs and so on, but ultimately it's far less than the cost of treating one patient with a biologic for a year. And if you look at the potential for using that data to actually improve quality of care, it's actually quite cheap, I would suggest. And certainly the feedback that we've had from many sites or many centres is they don't actually blink twice at that, which was quite an important thing. And we were quite surprised by that. We weren't surprised. The BSG were very surprised when we said, it's not a huge amount of money when Keith's reports come back, and tick that box very easily.
Yeah, if I could just expand on that. When HQIP stopped funding successive rounds of the IBD audit, they did so explicitly on the assumption that the registry would take over the audit function. That has been embedded into a process called quality accounts, so that IBD is one of about 20 chronic disease areas on the list of quality accounts. What that means is that every trust in England anyway has a mandatory duty of responsibility of reporting data on those disease areas. The process that Fraser alludes to was a result of me and Richard hatching a plan to go to trust chief executives and offer them the registry as a vehicle for their already existing process of reporting on quality accounts. We had some indulgent smiles from people who I think difficulties in funding, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, 75 trusts around the country, I wouldn't say bit our hands off, but responded positively to the offer to provide the registry as a vehicle for producing data on quality accounts. Clearly, that's only a start, and it's one of our aims with expanding resources to get more trusts involved. This is trusts paying to fulfill a requirement that they will get fined for if they don't supply the funds. It's a bit of a no-brainer, and we're working hard on it and making progress.
And I would just add, many of us are in charge of budgets of £1 to £2 to £3 million for biologics. So just badging it as part of the governance associated with a fairly big drug spend, which is very visible in your hospital, would make it a set thing.
Okay, we are right out of time, I'm afraid, but if I could just draw us to a close. Firstly, to say, one of the things that I found quite fascinating at Richard's funeral and also at the memorial we held was how little Aviva and the family knew about the work that Richard did in his professional life. So hopefully today, Aviva and Sam, you've learned a little bit more about the impact that Richard had had. I think we probably all feel that the programme today, Richard was instrumental in so many different areas. They were all areas he was passionate about. He's left us a fantastic legacy, and I think hearing some of the presentations today, it's really brilliant that actually that work is continuing to be moved forward, and the legacy that Richard has left us has been fantastic, and it's great to hear a bit more today. So you can be proud and confident that Richard's legacy will continue to be driven forward. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us today. I believe it's coffee now. I don't think there's any other announcements we need to make, is there? No. Great. Thank you to our speakers. Enjoy the rest of the day.